Alright, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel. We are once again looking at some storyteller tips and tricks when it comes to running the game. Now, this is a Sex and Violet setup. I have got 3 different setups prepared for you today. Now, I'm doing things a little bit differently. First of all, I'm running it like a PowerPoint rather than off the app because I wanted to go through and have a complete setup loaded and then just like go directly to the next one rather than tinkering. I feel like I tinker a little bit, which diminishes our ability to look at a whole setup of a situation. But this is scenario 1. Let me kind of run through it quickly. We have a Serenovus, and we have a Witch, we have an 11-player game, which means there would be an outsider, except the Vigor Mortis has removed 1 by default, and I've included some bluffs. Now, what is our goal here today? We are looking at Savant information. This is going to be a guide as to how to generate some ideas as to what kind of Savant information you can be giving your Savant player. So, Seat 5 is going to be our power player for this game. Now, our Savant just happened to talk to the entire evil team or hear bluffs from the entire evil team and also the Sage. So I've included those claims here, and the Clockmaker information was also public. So this is everything that the Savant knows on the first day. I'm not going to go and do multiple days after this one, but this is just enough to get us started with some ideas. And this is also, us as the storyteller have to also know these things. Sometimes the bluffs will help us know which things the evil team might claim to be, and we can talk about those things to the Savant. But let's just look at true pieces of information for right now. I haven't marked who's been Witch cursed, and I haven't marked who's been Serenovus cursed, but where the curse is, or the fact that a player is cursed, or a fact that a player is Serenovus mad, is will be a true statement we can make. We can talk about Clockmaker information. We can talk if the Philosopher has in fact activated. We can talk about the Philosopher droisening someone. We can talk about the number of players who could have received incorrect information because there is no mathematician in play. The Snake Charmer picked somebody and missed, so we could talk about that in some way. I don't think I would specifically allude to it that much. I might be like a good player knows one person's not a demon. I think that might be a little bit too conclusive. You could do something like player name seat 4. So for all intents and purposes, all of these people, their birth name is their seat number. Seat 4 has one player they can trust is not the demon. Is not terrible information. That sounds really vague, except that the Snake Charmer is a player that could do that. In theory, if you gave this information later in the game, the number being 1 specifically might be misleading. But if you did something like collated all of the Flower Girl information, that might be like one way to do it. Or it could be a dreamer that correctly dreamed someone and they were confirmed. There's a few different ways that this could have worked. Like in theory, the dreamer could be the person that knows someone who's not the demon. What else is a true statement? I don't think I want to give info that the Sage is in play. If it was perhaps a Vortox game, you could allude to a Sage in play with a false statement, so that when the Sage did give their information, you trusted that that person was the Sage, but you're still trying to figure out if that information was true and correct or not. Depending on who the Dreamer picked, you could give Savant information relevant to the Dreamer. If the Dreamer picked someone and they weren't confirming them, you could give the Savant information that one of those 2 characters is not in play or is in play. So for example, if the Dreamer picks the Serenovus, and on the first day, people aren't really going to know that the Serenovus is in play unless their ability activates. So as the Savant, you could say that the townsfolk that the Dreamer saw, okay, this is not in quotes, it would not be worded like this, but the townsfolk the Dreamer saw for the Serenovus was not in play. So, for example, if you showed Flower Girl Serenovus to the Dreamer, then you go, okay, the Flower Girl is not in play. I hear a lot, both players doing artist questions, but also sometimes receiving storyteller information of the X character is a demon bluff. I really dislike that as information used in the game because it's not actually as helpful as you think. Very often, bluffs will not be used. In this specific setup, I picked 3 townsfolk that is going to be the bluffs, but because it's an 11-player game, the Vigor Mortis knows there's no outsiders in play. The Vigor Mortis always has a safe bluff to be an outsider here, and that's why I have claimed Barbar written on there. So is a demon bluff doesn't specifically help you find the demon because the demon will always know things. The demon will always know things beyond bluffs. On the first day, the Town Crier and the Oracle will not have information, but you could give the Savant information, like a true statement as the number of dead evil players, or the number of alive evil players, or something like that, which is always interesting because you never truly know just by like looking around the town. When you're looking at the Grimoire, you're always like, okay, yeah, this is obvious. But having that number play with the Oracle, like for example in a Fangu game, if the Fangu jumps, the number of alive players that's given to the Savant might indicate that they don't think there's any dead players, but the Oracle gets a 1. Those 2 pieces of information together tell you that the Fangu has in fact jumped, or the Savant and the Oracle have 2 different worldviews if it's a different demon, and an evil player has not been created. I think that kind of stuff can be really interesting. You can use a piece of information that is similar to what a character does. For example, you could say the demon nominated today, which plays off the Town Crier information. The Town Crier got a no minions nominated today, but the Savant gets the demon nominated today. That could also be something to play off as well. We did talk about the minions a little bit. Our Clockmaker information. So we could say, as a piece, you could pick a specific minion and say the Clockmaker measured its distance from the witch or something like that. And so if people think that they've killed this particular character, they go, okay, what is 3 steps from the witch? Like if there's just no witch cursing for a while, like, okay, when do we think the witch died? I think is fine. I think the Serenovus is a little bit more easier to pick because the Serenovus madness goes away and a player specifically knows that they're Serenovus mad or not. If no one claims to be Serenovus mad, you can be pretty confident that the Serenovus is dead. But also, the Vigor Mortis hitting that character isn't going to help you know that the effect has gone away if they're dead. So I think that's also probably fine in this scenario to say the Clockmaker measure their steps from this minion name. And again, the Savant always lives in that dichotomy of is this just false in general. I think that's an interesting piece of information to give, and it's one that I've actually not heard before. So I think that could be helpful as well. That could be one that we give here. And then depending on who the philosopher picks, you could indicate that a specific player or a specific character, their information has been affected or something like that. And a lot of this is just vaguely looking at the grimoire and trying to get a vibe for what could be potential information. Let's go through some just strictly false things, right? Strictly false things. There is a player who is not mad that they are the evil twin or something like that. It's like very, very obviously false, right? We want to find things that are false that the Savant cannot see immediately, but might find out over time. We can do characters that are not in play. We can do outsider manipulation. We could say an outsider has been added. We could say that there's been no outsider manipulation. We could say that there's exactly one outsider. We could vaguely refer to an outsider. We could say that there is an outsider sitting next to a minion. And that's one that I hear a lot of the specific position of the players. So like there's a pair of minions together, which would be true information, but like is one that I hear a lot. We could say, yes, there's an outsider sitting next to this thing. One piece of information that we got in a Lord of Typhon game that I thought was really interesting was the largest chain of unbroken townsfolk was 4, I think, in the game in question. In this scenario, it would be 6, which is really funny. which is like incredibly telling. It's more than 50% of the Grimoire is an unbroken chain of good players. That is, in fact, true information. But you would maybe think that is false. So instead, you could say the largest unbroken chain of townsfolk is 5 players, and that sounds like a really big number. But it's also telling that like all the evil team is kind of grouped together, and there's like maybe not an outsider or something like that. And so if you said 5, that's still a very big number. The Savant would think that is false, but the true one is actually 6, which is also crazy. Like you can kind of look at things like that as well. If with the Dreamer, with the Snake Charmer, they both are townsfolk that select a player. You could talk about a player that was picked by them, but not specifically mention it. Like you could say a townsfolk selected a minion, even though the Oracle picked a townsfolk or something like that, or Snake Charmer picked a townsfolk. With this setup specifically, it kind of depends on how active the things are. You could refer to numbers in particular, so the Clockmaker, the Oracle, obviously, again, not on the first day, but later in the game, and then some of the other numerical characters like the Mathematician. The Savant could get a piece of information, which is like a correct 0 was given to a townsfolk or something like that. And you look at how you're pairing it. Now, a lot of these ideas are all separate. They're not conclusive, helpful things. But with Savant information, I think when you are looking at stuff, and some of the things that I often struggle with the Savant is accidentally going true, or going false, or always doing true first and false second, right? If you have some ideas about what these things could be, it makes it a little bit easier, I think, to give the Savant information. Oftentimes, instead of thinking of it as being true and then false, I go like, which one is going to seem to be more helpful, which one is going to seem to be less helpful. Because you might have a false piece of information that's really helpful when they figure it out later, and then I start with that one. I go, okay, this is the thing that I need to go, okay, how helpful is this one piece of information going to be? And then what am I going to pair that with, right? Like if I give a really helpful piece of information that's going to help them confirm and make like a love triangle with a Dreamer or something, I go, okay, if this is the really strong piece of information, how detrimental does the false thing need to be, or how believable does the false thing need to be? Because you're also kind of like measuring believability for each thing. If something is like very, very obviously false, it's going to be played very differently with the piece of information it's given. Like they might just blindly trust the other thing. If we say the largest unbroken line of townsfolk is 5, which is the false thing, and then the true thing is like the Dreamer saw a Snake Charmer last night, right? And the Dreamer goes, I did see a Snake Charmer last night. And the Savant's like, well, why would I believe you? Why would you public that information? There's no way that there's 5 unbroken townsfolk around. But then the Dreamer goes, well, hang on a minute. I'm in seat 2. The Snake Charmer's in seat 4. You, the Savant, are in seat 5. Am I likely to believe that the person next to me, the Oracle, is good? And then maybe they can figure it out, right? So thinking about how they're going to measure against each other, I think is also important. And oftentimes you need to know the pacing for when the Savant's going to come and talk to you, right? When you start the day off immediately, you have a little bit of time before the Savant comes and talks to you, where you need to be thinking about what that Savant information is going to be. Sometimes what I will do during the night phase is I will go, okay, this is what's happening, and then I go, what's my Savant information going to be? And I'll write it down. Some of the upside of playing on the app, I'll write down what the Savant information for today is going to be. When they come and talk to me, I have it prepared and ready. And a lot of the times when you can be more prepared and ready, it's a lot harder for them to get a soul read on what you're trying to tell them with the information. And so that, I don't know, maybe that's a hot tip or whatever. All right, let's go to our next setup. So this one is going to be slightly more complicated, and then the last one is going to be much more complicated again. So this setup, we've got an Evil Twin, an Evil Twin Oracle pair. We have a Serenovus, who again has not, it's not obvious as to who that person has picked. We've got a Vortox in play, so we are looking at specifically false Savant information. We've got a Juggler that juggled the Evil Twin correctly, the Seamstress correctly, and the Clockmaker correctly but was given a 2. We've got a clockmaker that was also given a 2. The seamstress selected the clockmaker and the Vortox and got that they are the same alignment. We have a mathematician that received a 0. I'm pretty sure that's the main stuff. The good team's got nothing. The seamstress trusts the demon and the clockmaker on the same team, which is most likely the good team, because it's quite likely here that the clockmaker will get executed as Vortox bait and will look really good kind of throughout the game. And then the clockmaker, at the very least, will trust the Vortox player, who is claimed to be the philosopher, a character not in play. We've got the Oracle, good twin, and evil twin pair. The Oracle is not going to super be able to dispel what's going on. However, clockmaker executed, the Oracle is going to get a 1, no matter what, because it's a Vortox game. And that means that the player that dies on the first night might look like a Fangu jump if everyone trusts their information is not Vortoxed. Otherwise, it must be a Vortox, which I think is interesting. We also have an artist question. The artist question is like kind of hard to prepare Savant information around. When the artist question comes and you make a judgment call as to how helpful that is, you can maybe work that with the Savant based on maybe what the question was or something like that. Or you could use it to like eliminate people to make the artist question a little bit better, perhaps. I think all these things are fine. For the purposes of this, we're going to say that the artist asked the question, am I the artist? And you said, no, you are not the artist. And they are definitively positive that it's a Vortox game. What Vortox information do we give the Savant? This is not an insane corner case scenario. This is a thing that's probably going to happen. What's some good information to give to the Savant? Well, if the Oracle 1 creates a Fangu worldview, we can give a piece of Savant information that makes you think that the Fangu is in play. So we can say the number of steps between 2 outsiders is 3, or something like that, is 2, right? The number of steps between the 2 outsiders is 2. So this is another one of those things where it's an inference piece of information. Instead of saying there are 2 outsiders, a thing which is like, okay, yes, the outsider count has been modified to be +1, because again, this is 11 players, there should be 1 by default. The Fangu will add 1, and then there should be 2. So rather than saying there is 2 outsiders, you say the distance between the 2 outsiders is 2 steps. And so they're already suckered into buying into the fact that there's 2 outsiders for this information to work, right? The more factors of the information that you're adding to it, the easier it is for them to believe which piece is correct. And in a false one, you just at least one of them, to be buyable. And in that specific piece of information, the Barber is 2 steps from an evil twin and a Serra Novus. And the Serra Novus being able to claim an outsider or whatever might work out in bamboozling the Savant. But so let's say that's one piece of information which will help build a Fangu world. And so we want to give a second piece of information that's contrary to building a Fangu world. We don't want 2 pieces of information that build the Fangu world, because then you're just communicating the one thing to the player. So the other false thing might be we could narrow down the juggler's information incorrectly. So we could say seat 9 was juggled incorrectly, right? And the Savant goes, the juggler goes, hey, what did you juggle seat 9 as again? And they go, well, the seamstress. And you go, well, I was just told that you juggled seat 9 incorrectly, so they are not the seamstress is what I'm being told. And they go, well, okay, what does this mean? How are we solving this? So rather than saying seat 9 is not the seamstress, you're giving the juggler a piece of information that's going to fit with he juggled 3 things and received a 2, which is the one person we're trying to figure out, and then you've told them the wrong guy instead of the person who's in the evil twin claim. And so you go, okay, wait, actually this false piece of information that says that the seamstress is wrong actually means that we juggled the evil twin correctly, which I think is interesting. And that puts heat onto the seamstress, which is fine, but confirms that the evil twin is the evil twin, in a way. Even though the information is technically false, right? And that's helpful. And then the second piece is that sets up the Fangu world, where they go, okay, what if actually it is a Fangu world? And then maybe you should continue giving pieces of information to Savant that build this Fangu world option, right? We could also do things about madness or revealing a character that's been hidden by madness or something like that. But again, it has to be false information. You have to figure out how you're going to work that. Oftentimes, when you have a grimoire setup like this and you see a bit of what the information is, you can go, okay, this is the bit that I want to pick at with a Savant. So, what are some other false options we could have? We could talk about characters changing, even though they have not changed. So starting on the very first day is not a good suggestion, because the philosopher does not change character, it gains an ability, and the barber could not have died, and the snake charmer you would know if it had swapped, and the pit hag cannot activate yet. So you would say on the second day, you could either indicate a specific player to say that their character has changed, or you could say a particular character has been created. Actually, here on the second day, saying something like a mutant has been created, or the mutant ability has been put into play. I know it's much less likely that a philosopher will become a mutant, but it does happen. A mutant ability has been put into play, which again is false. Another thing that could happen in this setup is something for the Savant to consider. Has a pit hag created a mutant? A person who had gained the mutant, become the mutant, would not be able to tell everyone about it. That's going to be hard to ratify and confirm. We could have something like, you could give the Savant conflicting mathematician numbers, which would be really funny. So in this scenario, the seamstress, the juggler, the clockmaker all got wrong information. All these things happen at a different time, though. The seamstress and the clockmaker is the only ones in the first night, so the mathematician should have received a 2, but was given a 0. You could give the Savant on the first day that a mathematician won. A mathematician should have received a 1 last night, or something like that. But still false, but conflicting with the actual mathematician's information. Which again is a detriment. You have to keep in mind that you're giving false information. It has to eventually be helpful in some way, or it has to actually help them narrow down that there is a Vortox, or it's so outlandishly false that it's not you're telling them that something is false, but like you go, I think that's really unlikely. I think that the other thing is really unlikely, so it's possible it's a Vortox game, and you can give more blunt hints the further away that they are from solving the game, I guess. You have to keep in mind that some grimoire setups are so unbalanced towards the evil team that you could show a good play the grimoire and they'd still lose. With that in mind, you have to sometimes give townsfolk such insanely obvious information without telling them who the demon is, but helping them, get onto what the worldview is. So doing something like really communicating to them that a Vortox is in play in the middle of the game, if they are really confident that there's not, isn't a terrible idea. So let's say it's day 3. The mathematician is getting a 0 still, because the oracle is really the only person receiving misinformation, and the Savant is the only person receiving misinformation. Everyone else has a once per game ability, and the mathematician is convinced it's not a Vortox. It's like, well, I got 0s. All the other information seems fine. I trust that the seamstress information and the juggler information lined up. We executed the seamstress. I'm pretty sure that they're the dead minion. The oracle is getting a 2 now, so I think it is a Fangu that's passed, and we executed the Serenovus or something. We now need to look at the evil twin. They're looking at the evil twin. They're executing the evil twin or something like that. And so they're really off base. They're really off the fact that it is a Vortox, and so we have to give them like a super obvious thing. Not all of your Savant information has been equitably true and false. Not all of your Savant information given has been one true statement, one false statement. It indicates that either they've been poisoned like one time throughout the whole thing, they've been poisoned the entire time, there's been a Vortox in play the entire time. Is maybe too much. Telling them things that make them think that their information is crap is not helpful. Telling them things that makes them think there's a Vortox in play is better. Telling a player that they're no longer useful makes the player go, oh, I'm no longer useful, I'm not paying attention anymore, I don't give a shit. You want to try to avoid doing that. Giving a player Savant information where it's like, oh, wow, okay, actually, yeah, it is a Vortox game, kind of has to be. If you have like a confirmed player, something like that, a scenario here that might actually be really good is really dispelling the Fangu worldview and being like there are 0 dead evil players, which might be correct at the time. Instead, if in the scenario where the evil twin and the seamstress are the ones that have been executed and the Vortox has killed 2 non-evil players, the oracle is showing a 2, but the evil twin is the only one that's dead. You can falsely give the Savant there are 0 dead evil players, and they go, okay, if we killed the good twin, not the evil twin, the game would have ended. So you have to have at least killed an evil player there, unless the pit hag changed them. But even then, there'll still be a dead evil player. And the Savant's information directly conflicts with the oracle, and the oracle goes, well, yeah, I guess it has to be Vortox. The oracle will always get a 1 on the first night if it's a Vortox. So they start piecing it together. They start figuring that out, right? The upside of it being false, and always false, is that I think it's easier to give Vortox information for this one because the balancing act is a little bit different. Because you just go, here's the thing. Neither of them are helpful to you, but they seem possible. And then maybe they become more ridiculous moving onwards. Let's go to our third and final setup. This is the hard mode setup. So let's start from the top. Seat 1 is the Nodashi, that claimed mathematician. The Nodashi is poisoning the Dreamer and the Sage. The Sage claimed the Juggler on the first day and juggled 5 things incorrectly because there's no correct reminder tokens anyway. We have the Serenovus, who has claimed to be the Artist. We have the Evil Twin, who has claimed to be the Oracle. The Evil Twin is once again paired with Seat 6, the Oracle, the Good Twin. We have the Philosopher, who became the Seamstress on the first night and used their ability. I have not picked who that is going to be yet. We have the Seamstress in Seat 9, who is mad by the Serenovus, they are the Clockmaker, and also drunk from the Philosopher, picked 2 people and got wrong information as the Seamstress. We have the Mutant, who is claiming to be the Town Crier. We have the Savant in Seat 7, and we have this Snake Charmer that will never hit the Demon no matter who they pick. They would just never choose Seat 1, they will choose every other person. Maybe for a period of time they pick themselves. Okay, so what's our Savant information? Our Savant is sober and healthy and unaffected by the Nodashi. We have a Dreamer that is getting information that's implicating everyone as evil. It's getting some correct, some wrong. So let's say the Dreamer has hit the Seamstress, seen Seamstress, but the Seamstress has to say that they are the Clockmaker, and has seen maybe Serenovus. I think it's a fine choice here. And so the Dreamer goes, well, that's not quite, you can claim to me the thing that I saw. I was really hoping to confirm this. It's not quite right. And the twins come out, and then the Dreamer, picking twins is going to always, just see Evil Twin Oracle, so there's no point there. And then, maybe he picks the Philosopher, sees the Philosopher, but like everyone else is wrong. So he picks the Snake Charmer, gets something completely different, and the Demon picks a Savant, yes, Artist and Demon or something like that. Trying to communicate to them a little bit that they are. And the Sage, who is unlikely to die, but claims the Juggler and juggles 5 people's random things. So they didn't get a very good claim, so it's kind of frantic. Maybe they throw a Demon, maybe they don't, and they get a 0. If they were a juggle, they would get a 0. And so what's some Savant information we can give? Let's just go straight up, true, and then false information. Every time, first one true, second one false. First thing, we can say, 2 people got misinformation on the first night. A mathematician would have received a 2. The mathematician received a 2. Could be the false information. Because the math info is correct, but there is no mathematicians who have received. And the Nodashi is claiming a mathematician and claims a different number, which is also going to be interesting, which means that the false information is so helpful. So, but that's our false. We do our true thing first. Our true thing should be an evil player has interacted with a townsfolk within 2 steps of you. So this is like hyper true. It's intentionally worded vague to not be 1. It's just if met equals true kind of a thing. And so they go, oh yes, the good twin. My neighbor is the good twin. I can trust they're the good twin. Or they don't realize that it's the seamstress. So later on, when the seamstress comes out as having been so nervous, the savant goes, wait a minute, what if the seamstress is the person? And they don't realize that it's a catch-all. And then the second piece is the mathematician received a 2 last night, which can also potentially lead to a savant thinking that they are the one that is poisoned. But I think for the first day, it's not super helpful because the first piece is a little bit vague and the second piece will conflict potentially with what the note actually claimed. But the mathematician is in play. And sometimes the mathematician can lie about what numbers they receive, but still claim to be their character. I think that's fine. So it's the first day. It's not game solving info, right? I think that's fine. And again, the first piece has to be worded so that it's vague. It's it's not specifically 1. It's just a townsfolk. Possibly, I don't know, make it as clear as possible. It's not specifically 1. There is a townsfolk. I don't know. It depends on how people read into it. Language is hard sometimes. I think that's part of the challenge to the Savant. Is language is hard. You could just say at least 1. That's probably fine. 1 or more townsfolk within 2 steps have been affected by an evil ability. It's probably good enough. Okay, so next piece of information. Now on our second day, what do we want to do? So our good team has accomplished nothing. They're falling apart. They haven't figured anything out. We need to give the Savant slightly better information. Okay. The dreamer has gotten wrong information all game, and let's say last night the dreamer picked the Savant and saw artist Fengu. And the Savant goes, well, I'm not the artist, but I do talk to storyteller because I'm a Savant. So you're sort of close. You're not, it's not fully wrong. You're a little bit wrong. I use evil and guessing, which I think is, a tunnel that the Savant could go in. So we want to try and avoid that. So let's give them a helpful piece of information about the dreamer. So we could say that the dreamer has picked only townsfolk so far, because they picked the seamstress and they picked the Savant. And so if true, the Savant then has to trust that the dreamer exists, is truthful about the people that they picked. The seamstress is a townsfolk and can be trusted, even though they're still mad as the clockmaker after death. And the Savant knows that they are in fact the townsfolk. So that piece of information, unless if the good team is really far behind, will start to build a trust circle, which I think is okay because the Dreamer, the main guy when it comes to receiving information about characters, is poisoned. So giving the Savant really good information starting now, you know, that things are starting to come together, I don't think hurts that much, and especially if they're starting to maybe be a bit more obvious about being the Savant. So you have to keep in mind that they're not always going to make it to the final day and get 5-6 pieces of information. You're maybe giving them 4 max in an 11-player game. So the first one being vague, and then starting to like maybe like good information on the second, and then the third one is a great information. I think is also fine. So yeah, the choice here then potentially creating a trust circle with the Dreamer, but then what's our false information going to be? I think the false information referring to a minion that's not in play is probably fine here. So implying that a pit hag exists, I think is the best case. The Serenovus has decided to lock seat 9 as the clockmaker for the entire game because they have a personal vendetta. They hate each other and they always bully each other when they play the game. And so the Serenovus is not likely to be revealed unless if the seamstress specifically breaks madness. So telling the Savant about a pit hag and being like the barber ability has been added to the game in some way last night as the false, I think works okay, because it's pretty likely for a pit hag just to create outsiders if they don't have any other better plans. And so they go, okay, well these are our 2 minions. Either I trust that the Dreamer is real and is a townsfolk, even though they read me wrong, so I have to specifically be false, and also my information to be good, you know, and it's not just a Vortox game, right? And the seamstress is a townsfolk, right? The thing that seems incredulous, but possible, or that there's a pit hag in play that created an outsider, a very common scenario. Which I think is fine, right? Like if they actually build the trust circle, then great news. The good team is actually solving the game. Let's give them their 3rd piece of information. This is going to be the 2nd last piece of information, and then we have the final day. So this one has to be great because the demon is likely to kill the Savant by this point, or even just have the Savant be executed, become public, and then you know, potentially lose their ability to have information in the future by either just like coming out as a Savant, not getting executed, dying of the demon, or just being executed. The Savant's in trouble. So let's give them a really good day 3 piece of information. And that piece of information is going to be about splitting the twins, because they've still yet to split the twins, let's say. The Oracle has been getting true and correct information the entire game of zeros. The evil twin has been saying the same thing. The evil twin has been saying the same thing, and they've also been receiving zeros. It's not helpful. The Savant is going to receive information that's going to split the 2 twins, especially because the day 1 thing was supposed to help figure out that seat 6 was the good twin, and the seamstress hasn't come out yet. We're going to give them a 2nd piece to potentially help that, because you don't know that, you know, it's like a Nodashi, a Vortox, a Fang who killed someone. Probably doesn't happen when you get information the first day. But you could have a Nodashi in seat 9. You could have a Nodashi in seat 5. Even though the Oracle is a good twin, it is getting bullied by the Nodashi. It is possible, right? So it's not enough from that first day piece of information to conclusively guess which of the twins is the twin. And we're assuming that both of the players are on their absolute A game. Both twins are super believable to be the good twin. And the Savant, it comes upon to the Savant to split them apart. So we could do something like there's an Oracle within this many steps of you, and that steps doesn't include the evil twin, which I think is fine. Then like we give a false piece of information that's not like super obvious, but like is maybe solvable, is maybe figure outable. I actually think there's an Oracle within 2 steps of you, true, and then false. There are currently 2 outsiders in play. Works nicely because the previous piece of information we gave was that the pit hag created a barber, potentially. It could be read that way. could also be that the philosopher turned themselves into a barber like a moron, but also it's most likely the Pithag created a barber. And then following up, the outsider default as 1, potentially Pithag created, or starting Fangu says there's 2 outsiders in play right now. And the Savant might think that's way more likely than actually the Oracle being the Oracle and then being the evil twin. So I think that's fine. Depends on how likely they are to believe a Fangu world, and if anyone else actually claims to be Pithag. No, if no one ever actually claims to be Pithag, and the Savant's like, yo, my character's changed, like, has anyone been Pithag this game? And no one says anything, the Savant might be likely to believe the Oracle and campaign for C10's execution. I think this is fine. I think this is fine Savant information to give. But now we have our very last piece. It's, the last piece of information we know the Savant's going to get. They're going to die by some means or whatever. And we're going to have to figure out, the good team has to figure out who the demon is on the final day. The Sage hasn't died yet, the Dreamer hasn't died yet. It's not super obvious it's Niradashi yet. But we have to tell the Savant. We have to tell the Savant something that's going to help them solve the game. And it needs to be demon related. It needs to narrow down who the demon is. I like a true statement that reads like Sage information here, where we go... I was going to say seat 4 and seat 5 is not the demon, but the Snake Charmer could become the demon at any point, generally, and so you shouldn't give information about a Snake Charmer not being the demon in case there is a Snake Charming. But in this scenario where we know for a fact that the Snake Charmer is never ever going to become the demon, it wouldn't be a problem, but I still don't generally recommend that. We could say seat 4 and seat 8 are not the demon. True statement. No, what about false statement? Seat 4 and seat 8 are townsfolk. True statement, seat 11 and seat 5 are townsfolk. This actually seems really unhelpful, but the Dreamer and the Snake Charmer are townsfolk currently. The Snake Charmer could become a demon later. That's vague. That's fine. The false, the mutant, seat 8, and the philosopher, seat 4, are townsfolk. Well, if you believe things either way, none of these people are the demon. Right? So, you either dig down really hard and go, is the demon amongst these 4 players? Or is the demon just not mentioned at all? And I can trust that in either scenario, these people are all likely townsfolk, and we should go and kill somebody else. So I think it's fine. It's kind of the main way to run the Savant is to figure out what your options are for true, what your options are for false, what things best can you communicate to your Savant, and then how game solving is that going to be? Try and make a judgment call. How far away is the good team from winning? And make a judgment call. How much is the Savant trusted? How likely is the Savant to get information in the future? And try and figure out what best to put it together. I could make several videos of just exactly this type. We build setups and we talk about what possible Savant information there could be. And look, if you're interested in me running through more Savant hypotheticals, please let me know. Get in the comment section and be like, hey, what about this custom script with the Savant? Or what about these scenarios? Or what about, ask me things, because the point of this series is that I can run through stuff to help you, the budding storyteller, figure out what some good options are, and I can transfer my wealth of experience to you telepathically through a YouTube video. That's kind of the idea. But if I don't know what things that you're struggling with, I can't help you, right? So help me help you. I want to make more content about building better setups for the game, running some characters that do seem daunting and difficult to become a bit easier, give you a bit more ideas as to things that you could be running, what kind of pieces of information are viable, because you can talk about outside account, you can talk about steps, you can talk about clockwise, not clockwise. Lately, players in our group have been asking about odd or even seat numbers a bit more, so you could always give information about that. You can give information about what kind of minions are in play, you can give information about all kinds of different things, and all of this kind of stuff you should be considering. Now, if this is, if you are on that road to trying to become a storyteller, I will have a playlist up on the screen, which is going to be all of my kind of tutorial-y Clocktower kind of videos. There's probably more about putting stuff in the bag for the start, but then we started to get more stuff like when should the librarian see a 0, which might be helpful, and you should go and check them out. I will also have just like a random video on the screen. We do a lot of different stuff on this channel. We do a lot of board game stuff. I'm also doing some video game let's plays and a lot of general game design discussion, because what I do for a living is making games, and that's why I like working on stuff like Clocktower as like a form of mastering the game and understanding and how things are built and all that kind of stuff. It's professional development for me. And as always, I will have the subscribe button up on the screen because I appreciate all the subscribers, and I like having people come in and watch me playing Clocktower and me doing goofy things and saying funny stuff and getting in the comments being like, wow, Keith, you're such a dickhead. I appreciate that. Actually, I enjoy that a lot. And sometimes I like to be able to have people ask me things about stuff, and you will miss all my videos unless if you click the subscribe button. So you gotta join the gang. You gotta stick around, and then hopefully I'll have some cool stuff coming up for you soon that might be exciting, might be interesting for you to look at, might be cool and fun.